Hi, my name is Alan and the theme to this story is Money Talks. But money doesn't talk. Money can't tell a story. It's people that talk. It's the natural world that talks. Even sea turtles talk. The question is, who's listening? Well, thanks to my parents, I started listening at an early age. They took me to Hawaii to scuba dive in a marine protected area. Now, as we hovered over these pristine coral reefs, one of the protected species, the honu, or sacred green sea turtles, would sit on those reefs and look at you with genuine curiosity, eyeing you with their glassy eyes, and just with a flick of their flipper they could disappear into the blue with amazing grace and agility, revealing 100 million years of slow-cooked evolution. And I remind you, human beings only have 5 on the planet. Now, I was reintroduced to sea turtles when I went to the Gulf of California to study marine conservation and biology. And the indigenous people there, the Seri or Kumkak Indians, are one of the most closely related groups to sea turtles in the planet because for thousands of years they sustained primarily off of sea turtle meat. They would go out in these balsa reed canoes in notoriously rough oceans and spear them with their wooden harpoons. Then they would eat the meat, use the bladder to store water. They would even slide down rocky escarpments in their shells as a show of bravery. My guide, Alfredo Lopez, a Seri elder and husband of the local medicine woman, was the head of the Seri Sea Turtle Conservation Group. And I remember listening to him tell stories about these animals, looking into his watery, sea turtle-like eyes, which from a distance looked brown, but if you looked really close, they were a deep blue, the same color as the Sea of Cortez. And this man could actually mimic the different sounds the different species of sea turtles made when they came up to the surface for a breath of air. And it sounded something like, pff. And it was so funny when he did it that we'd have to look at each other and laugh. Now, picture a small, dark-skinned man like Yoda with gray whiskers and a cap that says Seri Sea Turtle Conservation Group, and that was Alfredo. And he was one of the directors of a very famous ceremony in which they actually speak to the leatherback turtle. And this is the giant turtle the size of a Volkswagen Beetle that almost defies the laws of science in that as a cold-blooded animal it regulates its own body temperature, it dives to depths of 6,000 feet to eat its weight in lion's mane jellyfish. It has spines in its throat to hold these jellyfish down as it swallows them. And in the ceremony, they actually communicate with this animal. It speaks their language because it was once a person, and it once raised the Seri homeland from the muddy depths before the dawn of man. Then they paint its carapace with natural dyes and sing and dance before singing it back to sea. They haven't been able to have this ceremony for many years now because leatherbacks and all the other 7 species of sea turtles are going extinct. This inspired me to participate in guerrilla-style sea turtle conservation work in Central America. Now, sea turtles, even the ones in the Gulf of California, will actually travel across entire ocean basins and return to the same nesting beach where they were born using a magnetic compass. And many of these beaches are located in Central America. So my job was to live in a camp with a group of international volunteers. And we lived right there in the sand with the stenosaurs, the iguanas, the anteaters, the green parrots, the spider monkeys, the crocodiles, the black-tipped reef sharks. And our job was to patrol these beaches at night when the mothers come up to nest. And we would collect their eggs and then relocate them to a protected hatchery. And the reason is because one of the biggest pressures sea turtles are facing is that poachers are actually collecting nearly 100% of their eggs on the nesting beaches and selling them to a black market as a false aphrodisiac. Now, many of these poachers are also consuming the eggs culturally. They were kids, families, old men who perhaps couldn't afford Viagra. But some of them were the more malignant poachers who were really making an easy buck. They could make as much in 10 minutes as they could in an hour or 2 of hard construction labor in the tropical sun. And nobody was enforcing the laws. And so our job was to patrol these beaches. And at first we were doing it alone, but then we acquired some local help. And my biggest helper in this respect was a man named Alexi. He was a local fishing boat captain that had retired, and he now dedicated his time to cleaning the beach and captaining the town soccer team. Now, the first time I met Alexi, he came into our camp like an African trickster spirit, his ebony skin shining under his white tank top, a towel around his neck, relating a tragic story about how a family had recently drowned at the beach, and because he was hungover that day, he wasn't there to help them. In fact, he was struggling with alcoholism, and he had this cologne, which I later discovered the essential essence of which was guaro, the local moonshine. Now, when I first arrived, Alexi would help visitors find nests if they asked him kindly, because he didn't appreciate the crisis that the turtles were facing. However, by the time we left, after our cultural exchange, Alexi was really the local park ranger for the beach. He talked to everyone that came and asked them to respect the rules. He built a fence to keep out four-wheelers and cars. He even built a shelter with expensive building materials that a local man had donated, and local materials such as a palm thatched roof to keep us out of the rain and to also shelter the police who patrolled the beach. Now, on a typical night, I would be lying in my bug-proof hammock, and I would see a flashlight waving across the estuary, because you see there's this body of water that separated our camp from the beach where we patrolled. It was a rust-red river full of mangroves. And when it rained heavily, it would flood torrentially, and we would have to commit these daring crossings with our clothes and our gear held high above our heads, which was fun because we had a cute volunteer in our group. Then we would search for turtle tracks, and when we came up upon a mother, we would turn our red light beams on, approach cautiously from behind. I would kneel down and collect her eggs as she dropped them into a pit that she excavated with her back flippers about the depth of my elbow. And there'd be from about 40 to 100 leathery ping-pong ball-sized eggs covered in an antifungal goo. Another volunteer would help scratch my back, while someone else would tag the turtle with a metal tag. And I love doing this because the skin is so pungent and scaly and unfamiliar, and when you touch the turtle's carapace, it would often explode with purple phosphorescence. Now, Alexi would help us patrol and help us to collect our data, and he was our really invaluable guide. My favorite part of the process was when the sea turtle, oblivious that we had removed her eggs for protection, would lift her heavy body up and down, landing it on the sand to pack down the nest, and then watching her disappear back into the ocean, perhaps after a short nap from her exertion. And watching her eyes tear, which the Seri believed was crying. Now, as I watched these mothers disappear back into the ocean under the lapping waves, I often wished that I could join them and just disappear silently into the sea, leaving nothing on the beach except that indistinguishable track which Alexi would probably add to his count in the morning.